Today, I am pleased to introduce fellow Rotarian Moses Altsech. Moses came to Madison in 2000 when he took a position at Edgewood College as an associate professor and as chair of the marketing department of Edgewood's MBA program. Moses is also president of Executive Training and Consulting, a private consulting company. Today, Moses's topic is the legacy of the Holocaust, a topic emanating from his and his family's personal experiences. From 1941 through 1945, 4 short years, 92% of the Jewish population in Greece died in Nazi death camps. 65,000 people. But those are numbers, and sometimes numbers muffle reality. Consider instead losing every member of your extended family in the time it takes to get a college degree or to finish high school, or the time it takes for your toddler to reach kindergarten. In other words, in a blink of an eye. And think of 92%. 92% in the city of Madison is over 200,000 people. Imagine in the city of Racine, which is 70,000, if Racine lost 65,000 people, there would be 5,000 people left in Racine. Those are numbers that mean something. Such numbers, such losses, have generational impact and hopefully teach lessons. Please join me in welcoming Professor Altsech to the podium. Moses?
Thank you. Today is April 11, a date of no apparent significance. Yet on April 11, 1944, after a 9-day trip, a train arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Dispatched from Athens by Adolf Eichmann's office, it was the 21st out of 23 such transports from Greece and consisted of cattle cars filled with 2,500 Jewish men, women, and children. Upon arrival, 320 men and 328 women were selected for labor and admitted into the camp, while the remaining men and women, as well as all the children, 1,852 in all, were sent from the train platform directly to the gas chambers. My paternal grandfather, after whom I was named, was on that train. 63 years ago today, he arrived at Auschwitz. It was not until the mid-90s that I discovered the prisoner number tattooed on his arm in newly translated Auschwitz archives. It was 182446. He was one of the few selected for forced labor, but his good fortune was only temporary because he never made it out alive. Today, April 11, is the day my grandfather, younger then than I am now, arrived at the place of his death. He had joined the Greek army, as many of his fellow countrymen who fought off an Italian invasion for many months in the cold winter of 1940, in spite of being outnumbered and ill-equipped. When the Germans invaded, they quickly overwhelmed Greece and conquered it in April 1941. The Jewish community of Salonika, my hometown, had been an ancient one. It had been around for centuries already when the Apostle Paul preached in one of its synagogues. It had, however, seen a large influx of Jews who were expelled from Spain in 1492 and came to settle in what was then the Ottoman Empire. They made Salonika a beacon of Jewish culture for many centuries to come. When the Germans conquered it, that community's fate was sealed. One of the most poignant examples of their desire to wipe it out completely was the destruction of the Jewish cemetery in December 1942. It was a vast 4 million square foot cemetery, more than 2,000 years old, and the Germans razed it, using tombstones to pave roads, public toilets, other public works, and even a swimming pool for German soldiers. When people heard the destruction was underway, they rushed to the site looking for their relatives' remains among the scattered bones, to no avail. It was an ominous sign of things to come. Only 3 months later, the Jews of Salonika were deported to Auschwitz. All that remains of my grandfather's personal possessions is an old beat-up shoe kept for years by my great-aunt in Jerusalem. He'd given a pair to her mother when they were fleeing from the Germans in the Greek countryside. When he died, he left behind his wife Lucia and 4 small children who survived the war in hiding and longed in vain for his return. Dozens of other relatives had already been killed at Auschwitz in 1943. My maternal grandparents, Daniel and Jean Gattegno, were among the very few who were sent to Bergen-Belsen, being citizens of neutral Spain, and survived the war, but lost an infant son at the camp. All their relatives were killed at Auschwitz too. At the end of the war, they had no one left in the world but each other. How they managed to go on defies my comprehension. I did not grow up in the Holocaust, but I grew up with the Holocaust. It was part of my childhood and part of my family, and it's something I think about and live with every single day. We know what the Germans did during the war, but we try not to think about what everybody else did. In 2000, Pope John Paul II started the canonization process for Eugenio Pacelli, Pope Pius XII. That's the same pope who twiddled his thumbs as the Jews of Rome were deported to Auschwitz, a man whose silence was as deadly as it was shameful. A saint indeed. To make things worse, only 6 months ago it was revealed that Pius XII received an urgent telegram in June 1944 stating that the main purpose of Auschwitz was to exterminate Jews, a report he remained silent about as well. The telegram had been sent by Archbishop Giuseppe Roncalli, who later became Pope John XXIII. Archbishop Roncalli also prevented the deportation of Bulgarian Jews by threatening the King of Bulgaria with excommunication, should he allow it. There is one man who truly was a saint. Among my personal heroes are Damaskinos, the Archbishop of Athens, and Chrysostomos, the Metropolitan of Zakynthos, who strongly protested the deportation of Greek Jews and personally directed the issue of false baptismal certificates that saved a handful of them. But did that really make a difference? Well, ask one of the handful who lived how big a difference they think it made. Truly spiritual men like Roncalli, Damaskinos, and Chrysostomos were the exception, not the rule. But let theirs be an example of brave and outspoken moral leadership in the face of personal danger. What makes the Holocaust unique is that the killing frenzy often superseded military objectives and had as its aim the complete extermination of every last Jewish man, woman, and child. It was in January 1942 at the Berlin suburb of Wannsee that the details of the final solution were orchestrated and shortly thereafter implemented. But did you know when the first reports of large-scale massacres of Jews first appeared in the press? Massacre of Jews, over 1 million dead, reported at the Times of London as early as June 30, 1942. The New York Times had a similar report by Thanksgiving of the same year. And on March 22, 1944, the LA Times mentioned Auschwitz by name as a place where Jews were being massacred. 500,000 of them by then. Nothing happened. By June 1944, there were detailed eyewitness accounts of escapees who reported with remarkable accuracy the purpose and operation of the death camps. Allied bombers took crystal clear pictures of Auschwitz in the summer of 1944, some showing trains and columns of people on their way to the gas chambers. The Americans and British bombed nearby industrial complexes several times, including one witnessed by future Nobel Peace Prize winner Elie Wiesel, but steadfastly refused to bomb Auschwitz or the railroads leading to it in spite of repeated pleas, thus allowing it to continue being used as a factory of death to the very end. Take everyone you know and everyone you see every day on your way to work, and everyone who lives on your street and in your neighborhood, and everyone at the football games you go to. Take all of them and add more. In May and June 1944 alone, Auschwitz killed the number of people who live in Madison and all adjacent municipalities. No one did anything to stop that. So let's take a look at what we've learned from the Holocaust and what its legacy is today. After the war, as East and West struggled for domination in Europe, East and West Germany were seen as valuable allies by the Soviet Union and the United States. Denazification was no longer a priority. Many of those, in fact, who perpetrated the Holocaust lived a long and prosperous life and died of old age, fat and happy in a reunited Berlin. We even became self-conscious about mentioning the Germans in connection to the Holocaust, preferring instead to refer to the Nazis, as if those were a rogue gang of mad bandits. Research by Goldhagen and Browning indicates that it was, in fact, ordinary Germans, most of them not raving fanatic members of the Nazi Party, who perpetrated the Holocaust and could sleep at night when it was all said and done. Companies like BMW, Daimler-Benz, Volkswagen, Audi, BASF, Siemens, Bayer, Krupp, and others used Jews from Auschwitz and other concentration camps as slaves until they died from hard labor and disease. Their life expectancy was about 9 months. Yet most of their executives didn't spend a day in prison. And we still buy their products today because we have the memory of an amoeba and we like plush leather seats. In 1959, the Prime Minister of Greece, uncle and namesake of the current Prime Minister, passed a special law to free Max Merton, the German military administrator of Salonika, shortly after his conviction of crimes against humanity by a Greek court. He's the man responsible for deporting the Greek Jews to Auschwitz. In 1986, Austrians, the Germans' favorite playmates during the Holocaust, elected Kurt Waldheim to their country's presidency after his Nazi past had been revealed, which included, by the way, service as an intelligence officer in Salonika during the deportation of Greek Jews. This year in Croatia, where I can't wait to go on vacation, many coffee shops served sugar packets with Hitler on them and a Holocaust joke inside. People prefer to forgive and forget, and I, for one, am willing to do neither. Forgetting is not an option, and the only people with a right to grant forgiveness for the Holocaust all died in the gas chambers. Until the mid-60s, our country kept black people to the back of the bus and made sure they couldn't drink from the same water fountain as us. The likes of Strom Thurmond, who once said there's not enough troops in the country to force us to admit blacks into our homes and into our churches, served in the U.S. Senate until the 21st century. And the likes of Trent Lott, who wished Strom Thurmond would have been elected president, still do. Matt Shepard, beaten to death in Wyoming because he was gay, and James Byrd, dragged to pieces behind a pickup truck in Texas because he was black, cannot rest in peace because we don't do enough to honor their memory. We blame activist judges for sanctioning gay marriage the same way we blamed activist judges for sanctioning interracial marriage. Public opinion is against it, much as it once opposed interracial marriage and a woman's right to vote. We want to preserve our own civil rights, but feel threatened by the thought of giving equal rights to others. Chief Justice Abrahamson says that the definition of activist judges seems to be judges whose rulings we disagree with. It is those activist judges who make me proud to be an American. We would have done something about the massacres in Bosnia, in Rwanda, and now Darfur, but there are places that are far. Many in our country are not educated enough to find them on a map, and they affect people of religions and skin colors different than ours. So we let them be butchered, men, women, and children, as we're busy watching new episodes of CSI Peoria on TV. People like Ann Coulter and Mel Gibson gain acclaim and notoriety for their bigoted comments instead of getting the contempt and disgust they so richly deserve. They make big bucks with books and movies because our moral courage and sense of decency are still apparently a work in progress. Ford Motor Company's website celebrates Henry Ford with the words innovator, industrialist, outdoorsman, curiously omitting bitter anti-Semite, and the only American mentioned in the acknowledgments section of Hitler's Mein Kampf. But we put his face on a stamp, and our schools tell a story of entrepreneurial success without a mention of the fact that Ford was a de facto Nazi before anyone had even heard of Nazis. Our very own President Reagan paid tribute to the memory of dead SS officers at Pittsburgh in 1985, setting a mighty fine example for the rest of the world. We live in a country that champions free speech, but recognizes that it too should have its limitations. But where do we choose to draw the line? Pictures of naked people are obscene by our society's warped interpretation of propriety, but words of hate against blacks or Jews or other minorities are protected speech. So we keep kids safe by wrapping adult magazines in plastic and not having them sold at convenience stores, while hate groups roam free, peddling racism, anti-Semitism, and xenophobia undisturbed. Holocaust revisionism is on the rise. Unthinkably, people dispute the very fact that the Holocaust ever happened, while Holocaust survivors still live among us. There's also Holocaust inversion, the blatantly anti-Semitic comparison of Israel to the Nazis, and the despicable claim that the victims have become the perpetrators. Both seem to be among the favorite hobbies of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, who recently hosted a Holocaust denial conference in Tehran, attended by anti-Semites from all over the world, as well as a Holocaust cartoon drawing contest. Both brought shame to his country and exposed him for what he really is. Add to that his comments about wiping Israel off the face of the earth and a budding nuclear program, and you have a killer recipe. Syria, Iran's partner in terrorism, is still the home of Alois Brunner, who was an SS officer and Adolf Eichmann's representative, helped deport the Jews of Greece to Auschwitz. In the late 1980s, living in Damascus, a free man, he gave an interview to a Chicago newspaper expressing regret for not having finished the job. Today, anti-Semitism is on the rise across Europe, sometimes under the guise of anti-Zionism, though the outcome is still the same: synagogues torched in France, Jewish cemeteries desecrated across the continent, Jews attacked in the streets, and the extreme right making electoral gains in Belgium, Greece, France, some regions of Germany, and elsewhere, all in the 21st century. So the world has a short memory, or a shallow conscience. Perhaps we suffer from both. Yet don't think that we have nothing to celebrate and nothing to give us hope. Until last year, I had the privilege of serving the Ethics Symposium under the leadership of too many Rotarians to mention, and I was always more proud than surprised to see how insightful and intense the participants' comments were about accepting others, embracing diversity, and making other people's plight their very own. Is that not cause for celebration? Our club honors annually the memory of Rabbi Swarzynski, a selfless man who barely escaped Germany with his life, but also honors those who follow his example of integrity and service above self. In 2006, Mayor Cieslewicz joined the president of Edgewood College and the rabbi of Temple Beth El at the state capitol for a Holocaust remembrance event that sent a clear message about the strong commitment that our civic, education, and religious leaders have to preserving its legacy. I only hope other prominent figures will follow their example. We live in a community of forward-thinking activists known for appreciating diversity and helping others. Is that not cause for celebration? After all, the last century was not just one of unspeakable horror, but one of remarkable progress. It was the century of Albert Einstein and Elie Wiesel, Mother Teresa and Rosa Parks, Mahatma Gandhi and the Dalai Lama, King Hussein and Yitzhak Rabin. It was a century of destruction, but it was also a century of hope. If a family member or a next-door neighbor, or you are a Jew, or a gypsy, or gay, or don't have a light enough skin color, or have the wrong kind of disability, or political affiliation, or just have a big mouth, you too would have been loaded on a train like the one that arrived at Auschwitz that April 11. Packed into cattle cars for more than a week with standing room only, not even a place to sit, with little water and even less food, with a barrel in a corner and no privacy to go to the bathroom, you would have crossed the gates of Auschwitz-Birkenau packing warm clothes for your resettlement in Poland, clueless about your true fate. Your elderly parents, your young children, your wife or a sister with an infant in her arms, your friends too weak to stand up straight after this ordeal of a trip would have all been sent straight to the gas chambers. They'd be asked to undress for a shower and make sure to remember the number of the hook where they hang their clothes in order to find them easily later. They'd be stacked in a concrete room with heavy metal doors so tightly they'd be hard-pressed to breathe, and small children who didn't quite fit would just be tossed by the ankle over the heads of the adults. The doors would close, and the gas would pour in, and it would take moments to realize what's going on, but countless minutes of agony until an unspeakable death. They'd gasp and scrape the concrete with their nails, they'd pound the doors and scream, plead for the children, but to no avail. When the doors would reopen, those you loved most in the world would be corpses so tangled up with each other that need hooks to pry them apart. You'd smell their bodies being burnt in the ovens, and you'd refuse to believe the stories that other inmates told you about what happened to your family. But you'd believe because your turn would come soon enough. Or perhaps you'd have to live a lifetime with the knowledge of just how they died and the guilt that you made it out alive. And if hearing this now makes you sick, remember the feeling. Remember it, as gruesome as it is, because only this utter terror can feed a desire to face your own prejudice first, then that of others, to act, to speak out, to not put up with intolerance around you anymore. Injustice should be unbearable to us, regardless who it's directed against, and we should fight it fiercely wherever we encounter it. On April 11, 1944, 25 years before I was even born, my world changed completely. On April 11, 2007, I want to urge us all to change somebody else's world, this time for the better. I don't take any credit for my education and insights, and none for my sense of right and wrong. Without the values and determination of my grandparents, all of whom have since passed on, without my parents, whose love, patience, and guidance still inspire me today, I would undoubtedly not be here. Whose world will you change? We've taught our young people not to judge, lest they be judged. But we should have been more specific, so let's now teach them to judge those around them. Judge them often and judge them sternly, but judge them on their character and integrity, not on their religion or ethnic background or sexual orientation or gender or race. What will you teach your kids and grandkids? What will you teach those who count you as a friend or a mentor? What will you talk to them about? And what will you teach them? The legacy of the Holocaust is not something abstract. It's not something you figure out or something you read about. It's something you build and you preserve and you pass on to those who you care about. The legacy of the Holocaust, its lessons, honoring the memory of those murdered and passing on the meaning of their sacrifice to those too young to know, is in your hands. What will you teach them?